Welcome to Central News for Tuesday the 19th of November. I'm Harriet Wilson. In today's news, this month organisers of the 2014 Great Pumpkin Carnival have been busy distributing giant pumpkin plants and seeds to anyone wishing to take up the challenge. Organiser Jenny Rowden has delivered plants to schools, families, retirement villages and individuals, all who hope they may be able to grow the biggest pumpkins for the carnival early next year. Jenny says that the key to growing a big pumpkin is all about how well you feed your plant.
Some tips for growing giant pumpkins: you want to get your seed in the ground right now, as soon as possible. You want to water, keep the ground moist. Keep the snails at bay because they'll try and eat your pumpkin, and provide some shade once the pumpkin gets bigger than a basketball.
Undercover Cody and his team are once again travelling around the Waikato and Bay of Plenty with their SunSmart Roadshow, Undercover Cody's Picnic at the Beach. After the huge amount of success the Cancer Society experienced with last year's SunSmart Summer Roadshow, they are hoping that this year's show will be just as effective at educating children on how to be safe in the sun. Sarah Fitzpatrick from the Waikato Bay of Plenty division of the Cancer Society says the roadshow aims to entertain whilst offering a fun, sun-smart message to children aged between 2 to 4 years of age.
The Cancer Society's Undercover Cody Roadshow is heading to 150 early childhood centres across our region this year to teach children about how to be sun-smart.
Now for our region's weather. Hamilton, your Wednesday will bring you long fine spells with the chance of an afternoon shower and light winds. Your expected high will be 22 with an overnight low of 12. Tauranga, your Wednesday will bring cloudy periods with the chance of a shower or two and northeast breezes. Your expected high is 21 with an overnight low of 15. Just ahead, are you exercising too much? Welcome to Central News on TV Central. After the death of a gym goer in Hamilton this time last year, many people were delivered a shocking wake-up call about the dangers of over-exercising. Whilst many people can achieve a balanced, healthy lifestyle, there is a line where many healthy lifestyles border on obsessions. Waikato University clinical psychologist Jo Thacker shares more. So what are some examples of people taking exercise too far?
Well, there are a variety of different reasons why they might do that. I mean, some people will take exercise too far because they want to become, get themselves to a point where they feel that they're fit enough to do their sport or their something like drama or ballet where they have to be physical. So there are situations where people will they'll take it too far because they've got an end in sight in terms of what they want to achieve. So that's one example. There are other examples where exercise itself can become an obsession, and one thing to keep in mind there is that there's a fine line between what we might call an obsession and what is an addiction. So addiction is generally a more specific process, whereas someone might have an obsession with something which won't necessarily take them to the level that we might call it an addiction. So there are those different underlying processes. And again, people might do that for a particular reason. So they might have a particular end in sight. They might simply enjoy the activity, and it might become something that they feel compelled to do because they enjoy it. Often it's associated also with a desire to look a certain way. So for men, it might be a desire to want to bulk up. And for women, it might be a desire to be thin or lean or, to look a certain way. So the latter one obviously is about responding to cultural changes, cultural trends. So if you look back over time, you can see that what we might consider to be the ideal female figure has changed quite a lot. If you look back in the 1950s and 60s at someone like Marilyn Monroe, you have someone who's quite shapely, and that was considered to be sort of a female figure that people would aspire to look like. Whereas these days people want to be thin. So obviously that means that people will take it to the extreme, and particularly because the normal female body type is not straight up and down, super thin. And likewise for men. If you look at back before the professional days of rugby, men often who played rugby even at a high level had quite a normal male body shape. Today, a lot of the men who you would see on TV in major sports, especially professional, where they're devoting their lives to that sport, they look quite different. They're quite bulky and they don't look like the man on the street. And for a lot of young men, that's not really a realistic ideal to look like that, but they will pursue it anyway. And so obviously that means that they will take the exercise to the extreme because they've got this goal of looking a certain way.
So while excessive exercise is not a recognised diagnostic category, what are some of the mental disorders that are associated with it?
Well, there are a whole range. Something even like depression might contribute to someone exercising excessively as a way of trying to increase their mood. So that would be one example. A more obvious example would be body dysmorphic disorder, which is a type of obsessional problem. And with that disorder, what happens with someone is that they will look at themselves in the mirror and see something different from the reality. So for a woman, it might be looking in the mirror and seeing someone who's overweight when actually they've got an average weight or they're underweight. You see a similar type of distortion in body image and eating disorders as well, and they're another mental disorder area where you get problems. So with the anorexia nervosa, people will exercise to the extreme, and normally their weight would become, less than optimal. So they would be below average, for their height. With bulimia nervosa, you usually have normal body weight, but you can still have the same excessive exercise. So with both of those disorders, you can get excessive exercise happening.
Are you able to explain to us the psychology of addiction?
Well, you have to keep in mind that the term addiction is bandied around a lot and often used in ways in which it wasn't really initially intended to be used. So, for instance, historically the term addiction often applied to substance use, in particular alcohol and alcohol dependence. So these days people talk about a whole range of addictions such as gambling and sex addiction. So what they're really getting at there is that there's this sort of common underlying process, and that process taps into things that happen in the brain, basically. So even when you have something like gambling, which is a behavioural disorder, gambling itself can lead to changes in the brain, and it sort of taps into that basic process that can lead to addiction. So what I'm really talking about there is the reward system in the brain. It's often referred to as the dopamine reward system, and dopamine is a neurotransmitter. That means it's one of the chemicals that helps us do things that feel good, and things that feel good we will want to do again. So there's a system in our brain that helps us to seek out positive experiences. So for instance, for a lot of people, sex would be considered to be a positive experience. Obviously you need to want to do that in order to procreate, in order to go on and spread your genes. So if you put it in a basic way, the reward system has been fundamental in us surviving over the generations, over hundreds of thousands of years. So you have a system in your brain that helps you to eat, to do the basic things that you need to do to live successfully. And when you use drugs or you gamble or you do those things that feel good, they're basically tapping into that system. And likewise with something like excessive exercise, people will get a buzz from it. They'll get a buzz from the endorphins, but they might also get positives in other ways, which again tap into that basic neurobiology.
For more information, you can contact Dr. Jo Thacker at jthacker@waikato.ac.nz. Coming up next, the return of Bop FM. Welcome back. Independent radio station Bop FM will be returning to the airways of Tauranga soon after 2 years of being off the air after the business went into receivership. I spoke with General Manager Pat Spellman to find out about the plans for the station. So when is the launch of Bop FM?
December 1st is when we kind of flick the switch on, 5 o'clock on a Sunday. So yeah, looking forward to that.
Great. Cool. Now, Bop FM was supposedly a very popular station in 2011.
Yeah.
So what's happened since then?
Oh, it was a popular station in 2011. I just think I don't want to throw anybody under the bus, but it was a completely different time back then. You know, they had a different format. It was financially, the country was in a different sort of place. Tauranga was in a different sort of place. So I think there was a lot of sort of different cogs to the tramway, so to speak, that sort of suggested Bob FM wasn't in the right sort of place back then. But I'd like to think that we've moved on and moved forward a little bit since then, and we're in a better place now.
And what will make it different this time?
I'm involved. No, I think, yeah, no, I think, like I said, financially, sort of the economic climate would suggest that we're in a better place. Tauranga's just humming, eh? There's this vibrancy about the place now, and everywhere I've gone to in the last sort of 6 to 8 months, just talking about the relaunch of the station, everybody is so behind a local feel for radio. They love the idea of being able to turn the radio on and hear Tauranga music, hear Tauranga personalities talking about things on Cameron Road as opposed to K Road, and you know, talking about Central News as opposed to TV3 News, things like that, you know. So it's a local feel is definitely being welcomed back. So I think that's going to be the major difference between before, and we're not going to have such an emphasis on some of the things that they did last time. It's a family whānau focused format now, as opposed to a dance music nightclubby sort of focus before. So there's a whole lot of different logistics behind why it's going to be different this time and why I think it'll be more of a success.
Sounds very cool. So who is it going to focus on as a target market?
Well, our target market firstly is Tauranga, right? And I know that's vague, and people are going to question as to how we're going to make that happen, but literally, if you live in Tauranga, I would like to think there's going to be something on Bop FM that you're going to enjoy, be it the music, the personalities, the promotions, the prizes, whatever. I would like to think we're going to be able to do something that caters to everybody in Tauranga. The nature of radio would suggest we need a target audience, and you know, to target advertisers and whatnot. So I'm young and my team are young, so we're gonna focus primarily on an 18 to 40 market, which would I think encompass everybody from your students to your the rangatahi or the teenagers in Tauranga, or the parents, even the elderly folk. They're plus and minus at each end of that. So yeah, that 18 to 40 market I think is going to be quite important for us, but ideally everybody that lives in Tauranga, local people. You can't beat local music, and you can't beat local everything really.
And will it still have the same format of mainly dance sort of music?
No, and for a few reasons. One is that's a very niche market, dance music, and most of these 105 frequencies, when they were allocated, actually went to stations that went to a dance format, and the majority of them, with the exception of I think Christchurch, have all gone bust. So I think what I want to do is encompass more local music, and that's the first sort of big thing. Every 15 minutes you're going to hear a local song, and that's I'm working with a lot of different people that are going to ensure that happens. So when you're driving, when you're listening in the gym, when you're at home, when it's on in the background at work, you're going to hear Tauranga and New Zealand music every 15 minutes, and that's a promise that we're going to make first and foremost. And then the second thing is we're going to have a CHR sort of format, which is your top 40 sort of stuff, and the reason we're doing that is because it kind of caters to everybody. Mum and Dad love Katy Perry, they won't admit it, but they do. And they'll be driving home at 3 o'clock in the afternoon with their kids in the car, and the kids all love hearing Raw, and so will Mum and Dad secretly. And so we'll have that popular music because everybody knows it. And what that does too is it's going to attract people to the format and expose them to local music, which then everybody sort of wins. So you can kind of hear the Katy Perrys, and then local artists like your Luke Thompsons and your Regan Perrys and your Sweet Echoes and all that sort of stuff. And these are artists that people might not necessarily know right now, but because we're going to champion that local content, they're definitely going to hear about them soon, and then they'll be sitting in this chair talking to you in due course.
Oh, it sounds so awesome.
I know, right?
So how many people will you have on board full time, and will you sort of look at getting volunteers or students to come in and help out?
Oh, well, the nature of these small sort of operations is that volunteers are the lifeblood of what we're doing. So it's people that are passionate about local are going to be the people that sort of drive the force moving forward. Obviously there's going to be me, and I'm going to have a person who's in charge of sales, and there's going to be somebody who's in charge of marketing and promotions, because that's what they went to university and that's what they've got a degree in. And so we've got a core staff of about 5. I wouldn't necessarily call them full-time staff because they're paid peanuts, and we're all proud of that. But the goal is the bigger picture, and so we've got a core staff of about 5, and already before we even on air, we've got about 40 volunteers that are ready to make the ads, to write the ads, to voice the ads, to get on air and talk about whatever it is that they're passionate about. I would like to incorporate a bit of access radio to the format, because we don't have a station like that in Tauranga, and because I really want it to be community based and local radio.
Wow, but that's the sort of fantastic experience and opportunities that so many students and volunteers will be really after. So it sounds so fantastic.
I hope so.
Yeah. Now, will you have any of your previous staff coming back to help out this time?
Yeah, well, when we made available the fact that we were coming back, and that was one of the reasons. I mean, I love the Bop FM brand. We haven't altered much at all, and from the logo to the imaging to just the logistics behind the scenes, everything's semi the same. And when we made that available, there were a lot of people that said they put their hand up. Obviously, because I've changed the format a little bit, there's some people that won't necessarily fit in, your dubstep DJs and your trance champions and all that sort of stuff. But there are a lot of the volunteers and a lot of the announcers that were volunteering before that have come back. One guy we've paid to be our promotions coordinator because he was really well. He done really well last time. So yeah, there is a few people coming back. But in terms of management and stuff, fresh new staff. We're working with the people that took over the station last time, and they're going to be a silent partner in the background. But we're going to utilise them to kind of champion the community content and all that sort of jazz. So yeah, fresh new kind of look, fresh new staff.
For more information and to find out how to tune in, visit bopfm.co.nz. Just ahead, parkour in Hamilton. If you have just joined us, welcome to Central News. The Hamilton Parkour Association is on the forefront of the development and support of parkour in New Zealand. With an event coming up next month, members are busy training and getting ready to welcome practitioners from all over the country. I caught up with Damien Puddle to find out what it's all about. So for those who may not have ever seen parkour demonstrated, what actually is it?
Parkour is a training method, and it's about overcoming physical obstacles using your body in an efficient and an effective way. So what that ends up looking like is people running, jumping, climbing, swinging, whatever sort of movements are useful for whatever the environment is. So yeah, you see it on a lot of ads and TV, movies and things now.
So when and where is your event, Ham Jam?
Ham Jam is on the 7th and 8th of December, so it's the first full weekend of December, and it's at Waikato University for the Saturday, and then on the Sunday we'll spend the day in town.
And what will happen over that weekend?
In the morning on the Saturday we'll start off with introductory workshops, so just welcoming everyone there. We're expecting it to be one of the larger events, and it usually is pretty well attended, so just getting people to know what's going on, how they can join in and what's going on, and then it's sort of a bit of free reign, explore the university, enjoy yourselves, have fun, meet new people, and then we have a group barbecue down by the fields, and then we also have our association AGM in the evening, and then on the Saturday it's more of the same, along with an instructor forum where instructors from around the country are getting together to sort of share ideas and collaborate on what's going on around the country.
So why would you encourage people to come on down and get involved with the event?
Well, it's free, so it's always fun to try new things and not have to pay any money to do it. But parkour is extremely accessible. You don't actually have to, you don't even need shoes, and unless you're paying for a class, it's free, and the world's all around you, so there's so much scope for participation. And so it's very new, it's non-competitive, so you don't have to meet any particular standards to get involved, which makes it very inclusive and holistic. So yeah, we always want to tell people about it.
How often does Hamilton Parkour train, and what's sort of involved with your training?
So here in Hamilton, our most regular training sessions are on Mondays and Thursdays, sort of in the afternoon into the evening. And on Mondays, myself and another guy, Cliff, we run some mentoring for some younger boys that come in from Cambridge. They're about 8 and 9 years old. So we run those classes on the Monday, and then that sort of flows on to other people arriving and sort of a bit more either older or more mature, more experienced practitioners training. And it can vary from sort of flexible jams, just sort of exploring. You can think of it like how musicians would refer to as a jam. There's no structure necessarily to the training. It's just sort of feeling it, trying to make new things. So it's the same idea with going around and exploring their environment, finding new things, but sometimes it can take on quite a bit of structure and specifically working certain movements in certain locations. And yeah, so that's sort of the similar idea in all the different trainings.
How popular is parkour in New Zealand and the rest of the world?
It's probably pretty small compared to a lot of other places. In some way that's been cool because we're quite removed from a lot of places. Australia being our closest neighbour, we're quite involved with the Australian Parkour Association. But we just completed a survey and we had about 160 responses, but I imagine that quite a few people fell through the gap, so probably looking at 200 to 300 practitioners around the country, but you'd be looking at thousands around the world, certainly very popular in North America and in Europe.
Is parkour safe? What are the injury rates like?
That's always a big question with people running and jumping and climbing on things that are hard and quite unforgiving. This survey that we've done actually is looking at injury rates. ACC put out a report or something that said there was about 16 claims made parkour in the last year, which is pittance compared to any other activity, but it is quite small. It's from what we're finding in the data, it's just quite new. It's actually is much safer than a lot of other activities, and while the opportunity for quite extreme injuries is there, because it's non-competitive, because you get to choose what's appropriate to you. There's no one running at you full board, wanting to tackle you, and that's okay because it's part of the rules. You can actually be very measured. You're sort of, a friend of mine, Dane, said we're like mathematicians of space, and so we're learning to navigate things well. So it's the injury rates are a lot lower than you would expect, and certainly not very severe. They're sort of one-offs.
And how can people get involved? Is there a cost, or can they just sort of come down and join in?
Right. Well, with our events, they're usually free. We're a registered charity, and so we try and keep the costs to a minimal, if not free. And but if you go to the New Zealand Parkour website, which is nzparkour.co.nz, or look up the New Zealand Parkour Association on Facebook, we have regional groups all around the country with reps sort of heading up each of the regions, giving advice. We endorse and sort of sponsor instructors and classes around the place. So most of the trainings are free, unless it's a structured class run by an instructor. So there's lots of opportunity to be involved, whether you want to pay or whether you want to do it for free. You can come along, you can watch, you can participate. We always encourage people to participate, but there's no obligation to do anything that you don't want to do.
For more information on New Zealand Parkour, visit their website nzparkour.co.nz, and don't forget to attend Ham Jam on the 7th and 8th of December at the Village Green. That is the news for today. If you have news, an event or something you think we should know about, you can email us at news@tvcentral.co.nz or like us on Facebook. Thanks for joining us. I will be back tomorrow with more guests from in and around the regions. I'm Harriet Wilson. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
This has been an Alpha Media production, a division of Television Media Group.
Supporting local content so you can see more of New Zealand on air.